In this video, I wanted to pull some of my more competitive and intense matches against meta decks to showcase how the Tier 0 Ruby Amethyst deck, in my opinion it's Tier 0, fares in these high intense situations. So starting off, we're going up against a very powerful Amethyst Steel control deck. This is definitely one of the best decks in the format for sure, and you can already see the reason why. Even on the play, I can't generate any advantage in terms of lore until I have a way to protect my 1-drops by bouncing them back to hand, because a turn 1 hook trades favorably into those 1-drops. So I just lost 2 turns of lore generation. I do still have tempo technically, but that hook being able to trade up into any 3 toughness character stops me from questing with my Mim, with my 1-drops, with my 2-drops, etc., because I don't want to give that hook that extra value. Now, one thing that the Amethyst Steel deck really excels at is the early and mid game, and I'm about to show you why by this massive misplay that I make here, extending my board entirely into a shifted Tinkerbell, which was very telegraphed, into a Grab Your Swords for a complete board wipe. Now this is where Amethyst Steel really accelerates, because in the early and mid games they have things that ping for damage, right? They used, I think, with the Storm Rage on in order to basically just draw a card. They didn't really care about the damage on the Mim Fox, but these kind of actions and these kind of abilities really allow them to take advantage in the early game. And I make another misplay here, not using my Maui to take out the Tinkerbell, not having the presence of mind to think like, oh yeah, they can bounce both Tinkerbells back to hand. Let me take out the hook instead. Like, what a misplay, right? So again, hindsight is 2020. But right now we're both in a simplified game state where we're passing turns because all of our cards require interaction with either other cards that we have on board or the opponent's cards. And since nothing is being played right now, it's a bit of an awkward game state. So you can see me here wasting my exerting Pinocchio just so that I can play out a Madam Mim. That's kind of where we're at. And they Yzma back their own card to draw, so the opponent plays pretty much the same way I do. You can see they have a number of different cards in hand, and it looks like they're in control. And to a certain extent they are. They're ahead now on ink despite us going first, and they have more cards in hand, and the board presence is technically equal, but they already have an established Yzma that will now quest for 2 this turn. Thankfully, being on the play allows us to get ahead in the lore, so this quest for 2 doesn't really put them that far ahead to 20. They do end up dropping a Beast Tragic Hero, and you might think, well, Quantum, why didn't you just quest and be prepared there? Because I can save the be prepared for something more meaningful and just damage the beast so that I can also play the Mim Fox and recycle the Yzma. One of the things I talked about in my decklist video was the amazing practical application of Yzma being able to draw 2 multiple times, and this is exactly what I mean. In practice, this comes up way more than you would think, and you just saw my opponent do it and you saw me do it, right? Not challenging the opponent's Yzma with my Mim Fox though gets punished by a smash, and now my board presence is absolutely decimated. And my opponent is playing very intelligently. They know not to play into a Be Prepared. I've drawn too many cards. They know that I probably have one in hand. The stats are likely in that favor, and so they're playing very smart. And this is another reason why Amethyst is such a good counter to Ruby Amethyst, because they can play around the Be Prepareds. It's hard for them to play around the Be Prepared and the targeting removal, as you can see, dropping the Maleficent and then, not playing the Be Prepared was an option. And questing with the Mim, in my opinion, on their side was also a misplay. Again, probably not having the presence of mind that I could also play a Lady Tremaine. And at this point, this is why I think that the Ruby Amethyst version is just an edge ahead of the Amethyst Steel. Because now that we're in the late game, the opponent's pinging damage won't do that much because my characters are big. And so they have to rely on the Elsa tap down, which is still very strong. Like, I was underrating it until I played this match. But I just have straight up removal. I have the Maleficents, I have the Be Prepared, I have the Lady Tremaines. They don't have access to any of that stuff, right? But their Tinkerbells are going to be very underwhelming now. Their Grab Your Swords are going to be very underwhelming. Like, look, they had to sing Grab Your Swords here and then hard cast another one. And all that advantage the opponent built up mid-game after they wiped my board early on with the shifted Tink into Grab Your Swords is now gone. Now, again, they do have this Yzma, which is absolutely insane. Just put back the Elsa, draw it at a later time, and then just devastate the board once again by tapping things down. But you can see the difference in card advantage now. Look how the match has swung, right? So we're going to be able to cast Friends, drop Pinocchio, and Maui challenge that Yzma to out the opponent's board. And again, we're in control. The drop Tinkerbell here is likely what the opponent's going to do because we knew they had this in hand, I believe. And yep, they wiped my board with that, and that's totally fine. And then once again, they're playing around the Be Prepared, bouncing the Tinkerbell back to hand with the Mim Fox. So at this point, I'm just going to drop my hand in terms of the questing power, double mini surfer, and a goat. Now the opponent reveals yet another Elsa, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I really don't want them questing, like getting too far ahead in the questing power, because I'm fearing goats. I don't think they've played a goat yet, or they inked a goat. I could be wrong. Maybe they inked one, but they still have like all their goats, and if I let them get too far ahead, I risk losing the game to goats. So I make a really, do I make the play here? Okay, no, I guess not. Interesting. I thought I would be prepared there, but I guess I do not. So they Tinkerbell to take out one of my mini surfers. I guess I was waiting for them to overcommit some more. Yeah, let them quest. I guess it's not too bad letting them get to 13. And now we can get some lore to even up the count, because we can quest for... I can actually... Yeah, so this actually makes sense. I can quest for 4 and then bounce back the goat with the Mim. Yeah, gain the lore and then be prepared still. And this wipes out the board. We're equal on 3 cards each, and just like that, my advantage is all gone. Pretty crazy how this match is swinging back and forth. I played this match a couple of days ago, so I don't have it like completely memorized as to what happened. But yeah, the opponent once again overcommits on the board, but I have a second be prepared. So thank goodness for that. And getting that goat out of rotation is really good, because I don't have to worry about them bouncing it back to hand. And at this stage of the game, we don't have enough card advantage to say like we can play goats and bounce them back. So we're just like playing the goat and hoping it survives so that we can utilize it next turn. The opponent drops an Elsa to tap down my goat, and the Lady Tremaine comes in clutch because the opponent didn't think to protect. I don't know if they had another card or not. They probably didn't, but they couldn't protect the Elsa with another drop, and therefore the Lady Tremaine takes care of it. Now we go up to 19 with this quest on board here. The opponent reveals another Elsa in order to tap down my cards. So I just kind of played out the crab just to quest with it. We go to 16. Will the opponent quest? No, they opt to take out the Tremaine, and then they drop a Tinkerbell, and of course we have a third be prepared. They play out their whole hand, and instead of bouncing back their Elsa, they want to keep it on board in order to try to go free game in case I have a Maleficent Dragon or something, which would force me to throw both of my cards into the Elsa and out my own board in order to just survive. But I don't even need to do that, because double quest into the be prepared gets me up to 19 because the goat was banished. The opponent top decks a rabbit, which is insane. And we top deck an Ursula. And this right here will close the game out because Steel cannot deal with Ursula. They need to top deck an Elsa in order to tap this down. Otherwise, I just quest for game. They know it. They give me the well played, and that's the match. Really close one. Let's go to the second matchup. If you've made it this far in the video, please drop a comment on it to let me know how you found that first match, if you like the style of video, if it's boring. I used to do commentary over my Yu-Gi-Oh videos for Flow Underease into the meta matchups, but Yu-Gi-Oh is a very complicated game, so understanding the multiple different interactions actually had a lot of value. Whereas in this game, I don't think the game is nearly as complicated yet, so like maybe seeing the same matchups over and over again may not be the most interesting. That's why I like to post a little bit more diverse gameplay. But if you like these more competitive matches, I'd be more than happy to try to pump out this content a little bit more often. It does take a lot of time to edit because, as you can tell, these matches go for a lot longer. But if you see the value in them and if the likes and the views reflect that, I'd be happy to oblige. Now, this next matchup here isn't necessarily the most intense, but I wanted to kind of just showcase why the Ruby Sapphire deck kind of fell out of popularity. Now, this opponent, they're on, there are different variations of this build. They're on a version that plays the Mickey Detective, and I tested this version and then I found out that it wasn't the greatest because the Mickey Detective doesn't really ramp you into anything you want to play on turn 5 really, whereas the One Jump Ahead ramps you into playing a Hiram on turn 3. And of course, being a combo deck, you need the combo pieces. If you have one piece and not the other, it doesn't do anything, right? And so that's kind of why this deck fell off, is because it can be considered very slow. The end game is still very, very strong. It rivals Ruby Amethyst for its end game package for sure, but the problem is that you have no other ways of generating lore like Amethyst does. Amethyst has Goat and Amethyst has Spellbook. And in this matchup, as soon as I get to like 14, 15 lore, which I can do because I do play a lot of 1-drops, I can aggro things out early. You can see I'm already on 9 lore and the opponent's on 1. Like, you can't slow this deck down fast enough that I can close the game out with Merlin Goats or Spellbooks. And while you can remove everything I play on the field, which is fine, I don't need my things to quest in order to win the game at that point. I'm going to draw enough cards, I'm going to keep up with you in the card draw, even if you do get your Hero Minion online, and even if you are able to remove all of my threats on board as I drop them, I'm going to also be removing yours, because I'm also playing Ruby, and I have access to the Be Prepared, the Maleficents, just like you do, the Lady Tremaines, etc. The opponent was definitely baiting me into a Be Prepared there. That's why I played kind of very cautiously. And sure enough, they did Be Prepared. But look at the difference in the card advantage. Now, at this point, I can slow roll the opponent. I don't have to overcommit to the board. I can kind of just drop one big threat after another and force them to use their removal, in which case I can respond with my own removal. And this is why this matchup is bad for the opponent. If they overcommit, they're going to get Be Prepared. If they let me establish one card, two cards here and there, I'm going to keep questing ahead of them and putting that pressure on them. They can't deal with it fast enough, and that's why they just end up losing. Look at this situation here. They've let my Ursula survive for 2 turns. Now with the Mim Snake, I'm able to bounce it back to hand, and it's just going to drop again, reducing the opponent's lore, drawing me another card, getting me closer to that goat or that spellbook. And I mean, in this version, I wasn't playing spellbook yet, but I have since adopted spellbook into the build. Now the opponent is finally able to see a Pawpsicle. They see some of their removal in the Hades, but it's too late. You've left this Maleficent. It's going to quest for 1. Not even. I'm gonna trade into the Maui and then drop a Tremaine, right? Yeah, okay. Because I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player and I value control over winning the game. Sure. So yeah, we do that so that we can out the Hades, and I dropped the Ursula as well to say to the opponent, you better have removal for both, otherwise I have game. So I wanted to force out to Be Prepared. They play Flavorsham, and they need to draw into an Inkable and a Be Prepared if they don't have one already, otherwise it's game. And it's going to be 21-1 when I quest next turn, and you can just see why this deck can struggle. Even if you saw your combo pieces early and you got a really good start, you'd still end up in the same situation because the deck is still slow before it can get going. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this video. Again, drop a like if you enjoyed the content. Thank you for watching. Quantum is out.